Hello friends, good afternoon and welcome to EduSite Live Lectures. Dear friends, today in Sustainable Development Goals, we will be talking about genesis to Sustainable Development Goals and approaches to Sustainable Development Goals, which includes social, economic and ecological approaches to social development goals for future sustainability. To discuss this topic, we have with us our subject expert, Dr. B W Pandey. Dr. Pandey is Associate Professor in Department of Geography in Delhi School of Economics, University of Delhi. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Sir to our studios and request him to start the lecture. Welcome, Sir.
Thank you, Amrit. Thank you very much. Friends, good afternoon. In the continuation of the previous talk, I'd like to continue about the sustainability, the basic components I had discussed with you in the last lecture. Today, I will frame out the three pillars of the sustainable development, sustainability, that is economic sustainability, social sustainability, and ecological sustainability. Friends, these three components of sustainability are not separate. You cannot find alone one section of the sustainability unless we combine them, because economy associated with society, society associated with economy, and the impact of the social ecological development having impact on the nature, on the environment, on the ecology. Therefore, the ecological balance, ecological sustainability depends on the socio-economic pursuit of the particular society of a particular land, a particular country, particular area. Therefore, social sustainability, economic sustainability, and ecological sustainability are combined one piece. To better understanding, we have to look all three parameters as a one component, then you can find the future sustainable development. When we discuss the journey of sustainable development, you can find that the beginning of the concept of sustainable development, that is from Stockholm. Moving from Stockholm to Rio de Janeiro. So our common future linked with the Stockholm, that is popularly called as Stockholm Declaration, where the Stockholm Declaration, popularly known as Brundtland Commission, the Brundtland Commission defined the sustainable development, a development which keeps ability to fulfill the needs and aspirations of present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Those our common future gradually developed, and at the Rio de Janeiro it was developed as Agenda 21. So environmental conservation, environmental development, ecological development agenda for 21st century. So beginning from Stockholm Declaration to Rio de Janeiro Declaration, Rio Declaration, from our common future to Agenda 21. In this reference, United Nations Commission on Sustainable Development, UNCSD, United Nations Commission on Sustainable Development, that began in 1992, and looking the importance of the socio-economic, ecological parameters altogether, in 1992 there was a consensus consensus on Convention on Biological Diversity, that is popularly known as CBD. Conventions on Biological Diversity, CBD, 1992. And at this stage, I would like to tell you that biological diversity is a must for the present socio-economic and ecological sustainability. No doubt, it is biological diversity, Convention on Biological Diversity, but you know that biological diversity are not only important for ecological balance, not only important for environmental conservation and management. Friends, biological diversity is the key for economic development, for social development. Biological diversity means food security. I would like to explain here how food security depends on biological diversity. Friends, production of food grains, varieties of food grains, a better option of food supply, food availability, nutrients to the society in terms of flora and fauna. So diversity of flora, diversity of fauna enhance the availability of food. So food security, food supply largely depend on biological diversity. Similarly, biological diversity also assures social development, social needs, ethics, social ecological ethics, social ecological interactions largely depend on biological diversity. Friends, so the environmental sustainability, ecological sustainability, economic prosperity, food supply, food grain, food security, nutrients, social sustainability, social needs, all that depends on biological diversity. Therefore, you must understand that Convention on Biological Diversity, which began in 1992, after a long journey in 2004, India became signatory of the CBD. And now India is a leading country in the world in Convention on Biological Diversity. We have hundreds and hundreds of the wildlife sanctuaries, we have national parks, we have biosphere reserves, and finally we have hotspots and hope spots. All these initiatives of Ministry of Environment and Forest, climate change, ensuring the biological diversity in India. Then, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, that beginning with the 1992 UNFCCC. United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and that have a long journey to Rio Declaration plus 10. That is 2002. It moved to the Johannesburg. So from Stockholm to Rio de Janeiro, and from Rio de Janeiro to Johannesburg, and from Johannesburg, see, beginning of the common future, sustainability, sustainable development, move to the Convention on Biological Diversity, and then United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Finally, all these parameters with the continuous research and development at the global scale, the result came as a Millennium Development Goal. Millennium Development Goal. This is the outcome of the Stockholm to Johannesburg journey of sustainable development. Friends, Millennium Development Goal, that is a broad framework where all kinds of sustainability, sustainable development are taken under consideration. And we have a separate discussion on Millennium Development Goal in other lectures that will cover in detail. Today, covering all the concepts of sustainable development with the genesis. So these are all the parameters of the genesis beginning from Stockholm to the Millennium Development Goal of Johannesburg. Then you find the components of the sustainable development. So sustainable development based on the three-dimensional optimum point. Three-dimensional optimum point. This is the interactions of the three-dimensional optimum point. That includes the economic feasibility, economic resources, economic development for all, for the future generations, present generation to the future generation. That you can understand in a better way, that economic feasibility to the intra-generational equity. What we say, intra-generational equity to intergenerational equity. This is one of the basic concepts of sustainable development approaching to the Millennium Development Goal. Economic feasibility. Then you find the environmental viability. Economic feasibility, economic development, not on the cost of the environmental sustainability. Economic development, economic feasibility without degradation of the environment. Therefore, we need environmental viability. This is, in other words, you can say a congenial relationship between the economic development and environmental conservation. Then, both economic and social dimension. Third one, sustainable development through the social dimension, that is called empowerment. Empowerment, inclusion. Empowerment, since last many decades, you must have heard about the empowerment. Any country in the world, when passing through the second to the third stage of demographic transition, then you find the concept of empowerment. At this stage, in the concept of sustainable development, what do you mean by empowerment inclusion? I'd like to explain here. The empowerment inclusion means it is all the sect, division of the social segments, empowerment to each and every segments of the society, and to bridge the gap, to fill the gap in the discriminated society of India, like so-called upper caste, lower caste, discrimination in the casteism, religion-based. So it is empowerment to each and every section of the society. And friends, you must have heard, apart from the social empowerment, the cross-sectoral empowerment, you must have heard, and that is mainly come in the third stage of demographic transition, is the women empowerment. Women empowerment, more important for environmental viability and social sustainability. And you can find, since the revolution of women empowerment, there is a lot of changes, consensus, enhancement in the society, in the environmental sustainability. So the three-dimensional optimum point of the sustainable development, covering all the three components of economic component, social component, and environmental components. Friends, when the economic, social, environmental components they meet, that is the sustainable development in true sense. That is the sustainable development for the future generations. While present trend of the sustainable development, the two components, economic sustainability, social sustainability, which are more and more based on the technological advancement, social advancement that has been attained and being achieved. More and more concerned with these developments are the environmental sustainability, where there is a new trend which having a threat to the environmental sustainability. The trend and threat that you must understand. The trend is uncontrolled haphazard growth, first done by the first world countries, developed countries, now followed by the developing countries, third world countries, which has direct impact on the nature, on the environment. Friends, see the imbalance at both ways. So-called first world countries, developed countries, industrialized countries, having lot of emissions of greenhouse gases. These greenhouse gases through the developmental works, either by industries or by transportation, air services, road traffic, industries. On the other hand, the third world countries, those countries which had not been affected by social economic transition, living as a layman, living as a closed economy, traditional society, closed society, isolated society. Large number of people, large number of population living in the tropical forest of the Amazon basin, Congo basin, Southeast Asia, Melanesian countries, and everywhere you can see the mass scale slash and burn cultivation, which is called shifting cultivation. Friends, the amount of the carbon which is being released by the slash and burn cultivation, by the shifting cultivation, that you can find that a big amount of greenhouse gases coming to the air, which are causing to the climate change. So the climate change, global warming, emissions of greenhouse gases in the air, both by the first world countries which are developed countries, and the third world countries, which are backward countries, poor countries, countries without social economic transition. This way, there is a trend and there is a threat to the environmental sustainability because of global warming and concomitant climate change. So climate change is interlinked with other global, national and local environmental problems and development changes, which as loss of biodiversity, deforestation, stratospheric ozone loss, desertification and freshwater degradation. Friends, overall, these issues are big issues, and there is sequential impact of the environmental degradation, threat to the environmental sustainability. And you see, the global crisis of water, global warming, heat stress. A country like France suffering from heat stress. Many areas which were moist deciduous forest like Telangana in India is suffering from heat stress. So global warming causing to the climate change, and these changes are environmental threat that cannot be environmental sustainability. Friends, therefore, those components that need to attention for sustainable development, to sustain, I'd like to explain 4 important environmental components which we need to discuss, disseminate, to make the society aware, to make the science and society linked. That is number 1, geographical feature and its natural resilience. Geographical feature and its natural resilience, where the people living, it may be a first world country, maybe second world country, maybe third world country. Local resilience, how they are able to cope up the environmental stress. For example, very recent phenomena I would like to mention that Uttarakhand worst affected by forest fire. Thousands and thousands of hectares forest were burned out by heat stress, having large amount of emissions of the gases, carbon in the air, loss of biodiversity. And friends, not only the environmental ecological parameter which has lost in the Uttarakhand, the major loss to the common property resources. Common property resources on which local people are more dependent for their livelihood and for their resilience. So I'd like to mention that resilience always defined, impacted at the local scale. So that's why geographical feature and its natural resilience, it needs attention for environmental sustainability. And this natural resilience at the local scale, that depends, number 2, forest conservation. For environmental sustainability, forest is the backbone for environmental sustainability, ecological sustainability, economic sustainability, and social sustainability. Forest conservation. In the marginal areas like mountains, coastal areas, desert areas, forests are not only a natural setup or ecological setup. Forest is a source of livelihood. That's why forest called common resource, common property resource. So this common property resource brings the local livelihood, local sustainability, local resilience. Therefore, this is very, very important for the forest conservation to the environmental sustainability. Similarly, third component for the environmental sustainability is biodiversity and conservation that we have discussed. Biodiversity and conservation for environmental sustainability is an integral part with the forest conservation. We conserve the forest, we conserve the biodiversity. That's why we have large areas under the natural forest conservation through the government initiative by the declaration of the reserve forest, through the wildlife sanctuaries, bird sanctuaries, the national parks, biosphere reserves, hotspots and hope spots. All these conservation results as a ecosystem management. Friends, the natural resilience, forest conservation, biodiversity conservation, all these are come under the parameter of ecosystem management. So, ecosystem management is a backbone for environmental sustainability. I hope the detail of the environmental sustainability I have discussed, you have understand, and if there is any query, any question, you are most welcome to answer you, and see you in the next lecture. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Friends, good afternoon and welcome to the EduSet lecture. And in the lecture series, we are talking about sustainable development, its genesis, its components, and the Millennium Development Goals. Friends, in this regard, I would like to mention that apart from the three components of the sustainable development, which we are talking about, economic, social and ecological, we had discussed that journey of the genesis of sustainable development right from the Stockholm Declaration to the Johannesburg Millennium Development Goal. In this regard, there are a number of components which require for the Millennium Development Goals and which focus over the sustainable development. Now, in this regard, I would like to mention that the first important component of the sustainable development is natural resource management. Without conservation of natural resources, without management of the natural resources, the sustainable development concept is not possible. Its goals are not possible. Even the very basic of our survival is not possible. We are very much part of the nature. Man is a product of the nature. Therefore, our livelihood, our development, our future life, sustainability, economic prosperity, development, longevity of the life, longevity of the development, all depends on natural resources. Therefore, it's very, very important to natural resource management at the global scale, national scale, regional scale, and the local scale. Friends, there are so many natural resources, but what we look forward for the economic sustainability, ecological sustainability, social sustainability, what we need, where we focus more over the natural resource management are soil, atmosphere, which is air, solar energy, water, natural gas, oxygen, plants, fossil fuel, minerals, animals, and marine resources. Now, look all these resources, and then you can find how these resources are important from the very basic living condition, livelihood condition, basic natural resource for life support system, beginning from the life support system to the economical, social, technological takeoff. All the stages of economic development, all the stages of social development, all depends on these natural resources. Those societies which are not affected by socio-economic transition, those societies are using these resources as a basic resource for the livelihood, basic livelihood. Those societies which had little transition of social economic transition, they are using as an industrial revolution, social revolution, economic revolution. The societies which are having further advanced their transition, using as a economic takeoff, ecological takeoff, social takeoff. And these are the natural resources which are also responsible for those countries which have takeoff and establishing this stage of mass economic consumption, a stage of mass social reform. All these components are basic components. Therefore, natural resource management a must for the sustainable development. These natural resource management had direct impact on the food security. The challenges include the degradation of natural resources, climate change. Means food security depends on the natural resource management, climate change, which are expected to sustainability increase risk to the agricultural production, people's vulnerability to food insecurity, that is in the coming year, reduction of food, due to global warming, reduction of per hectare production of the yield of the crops, global warming leading to the mass scale degradation of the biological resources in the ocean. All these components causing to the food insecurity to the coming generation. Therefore, the time has come where we need more and more focused attention for food security. In the sustainable development, food security is a very, very important component of the Millennium Development Goals and sustainable development. In this regard, I would like to mention there are 3 pillars of the food security. 3 pillars of the food security is food availability, access to the food, food availability. Number 2, access to the food. Number 3, use of the food. Food availability means sufficient quantities of food available on a consistent basis, means regular supply of food to the each and every section of the society under food security. That's why in India Food Security Act is passed. Food access, having sufficient resources to obtain appropriate foods for nutrients diet. It's not only to fill the stomach, rather diversity in the food, quality food to balance the diet, to fill the requirement of the immune through the diet, quality of food. And you can see, friends, the poor countries, first world countries, they have least accessibility to the food, where 1 or 2 food grains that available throughout the year. As you go to the prosperous society, optimum society, to the first world countries, you can find diversity of the food. Diversity of the food with the diversity of flora and fauna. So having sufficient resources to obtain appropriate foods for the nutrients diet. And third, that is the most important, is the food use. Friends, food use is the technological know-how, technological efficiency, social efficiency, economic efficiency, ultimate sustainability. That is the food use, that is appropriate use based on knowledge of basic nutrition and care, as well as adequate water and sanitation, means not only to make the sufficient food to the diet, rather quality and quantity of the food with the diversity, with the technology, different uses of the food at different level. That is called 3 pillars of the food security, and this food security is the ultimate goal of the sustainable development. This is ultimate pillar of the sustainable development. Friends, the food security having number of contributory factors, and these factors also depends on the nature of the society. That is based on the food security and population growth. Now you can find in many countries where you can deny the application of the theory of the food supply and population, where the growth of the population also supporting the growth of the food supply. So the theory of Malthus is denied. Why? Because of the technological development. The procurement of the food, uses of the food, enhancing the using quality of the food, that is enhancing the food security. So population growth and now consumer markets. Population growth, consumer markets, and then come the trade and the trade policy. Trade and the trade policy. These are important contributory factors of the food security at global scale. And on the other hand, there are pillars of the natural resources. As I mentioned earlier, these pillars of the natural resources which are having a big role in food security. And I'd like to explain that water management. Without water, no agriculture, no land conservation, no forest conservation. We need most important basic natural resource, water management, land management. For food security, we need the good combination of water and land, good quality of water, high capability land, having good quality of soil, nutrients, humus that can have quality of food grains. So water for irrigation, land management, then you find animal resources. Animal resources as a food. And you know, major portion of the diet in the present world population, a big contribution from the animal resources, direct and indirect. And then crop production. So the crops, animals, these natural resources depends on land and water. Friends, this interaction from natural and from economic, from ecosystem, from anthropological, these are the contributory factors for food security. Those countries which have been more control over these contributory factors, they have better food security, food accessibility, and the food use. As compared, those countries which are third world have less contributory factors because the land become wasteland. I would like to give example. Those countries, those sections of the world where people practice shifting cultivation. Friends, look there, food security, food availability. They are not able to dependent only on agriculture for their food. Rather, apart from the cultivation, they go for hunting and food gathering. So that society having agriculture plus hunting and food gathering for the food security. Even then, they do not have food security. They are suffering from out-migration. Why? because they do lose their land, the loss of the soil, and after a couple of years, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, the land which we are using as agricultural land become wasteland, barren land, and that's why they leave that place and shift to the other place called shifting cultivation. They are not able to manage their land and water, therefore they have to shift. They have less variety of foods. They have less food security as compared those countries which are developed. They have water management, land management, animal resources, crop production. They have more diversity in the food. They have more food accessibility, more food uses. Therefore, food security have been contributory factors. These contributory factors are very, very important to understand the sustainable development. Now, all these natural resource systems, the food security, the present sustainability suffering from the threat of the climate change, and time has come to think over the impact of the climate change and the mitigation. And you find what are trends and projections of the climate change. Friends, it's very obvious, the increasing temperature, changes in precipitation, extreme weather events, extended weather cycles, and sea level rise. All these components which are found today at present trend, and also they are projected in the future if the growth of population, emission of greenhouse gases, the forest fire, transportation all continue, these are also projected for the future. And all these components of the climate change, trends and projections have been direct impact on the sustainability. Direct impact on sustainability like scarcity of water, agricultural related problems, health issues, ecosystem and wildlife related problems, and finally infrastructure related problems. Friends, here I'd like to mention maybe a number of questions that is sustainable development is possible without water? If there is a water scarcity, then present life is not possible. Intergenerational life are far away. That's why there is an ultimate need to come up with the problem of water scarcity and have water conservation. That's why water conservation plans are coming at a global scale for sustainable development. Water scarcity have direct impact on agriculture. Lot of agricultural related problems with water. And finally, water determines the health. Therefore, number of health issues, most of the diseases concern with water resources, availability of water. Friends, health issues, then scarcity of water along with the ecosystem and wildlife related problems. And over these impacts, having impact over the infrastructure and related problems. Therefore, these trends and projections have direct impact on the sustainability. That includes economic impacts, social impacts, ecological and environmental impact. Friends, the climate change and its mitigation are the basic component of the future sustainability and the kind of threat and livelihood of the future generations. These climate change are also trending with disasters, hazards, risk, vulnerability, and with the change of the temperature, rainfall, precipitation, and all kinds of the changes in the environment, in the nature, making our society more vulnerable, more threat, more marginal society, increasing the marginality. Therefore, we need more and more awareness in the society with the climate change, with the change in the sustainability. Then you find among the natural resource management with the climate change, there are a lot of components which require the sustainable development with the Millennium Development Goals. And in this regard, the first and most important point is sustainable agriculture, population control, green technology, and sustainable habitation. What do you mean by sustainable agriculture? It is satisfy human food and fiber needs, enhance the quality of the farmers. If these components are achieved, that you can say sustainable agriculture, green agriculture. Looking the future generations. For that, we need green technology and sustainable habitation. Those sustainable habitation is an ecosystem that produces food and shelter for the people and other organisms without resourcing depletion and in such a way that no external waste is produced. Thus, the habitat can continue into future time without external infusions of resources. Friends, this is the basic components of the intergenerational sustainable development, intergenerational sustainable habitat, so that there is no external waste production and habitat can continue into future time without external infusion of the resources. And this is the new dimension. This is the new dimension of the sustainable developments. And if this new dimension is continued, then an economically sustainable system will emerge to produce goods and services on a continuing basis, to maintain manageable size of government and external debt, and to avoid sectoral imbalances. Friends, components that need to be attention for sustainable development, present society economy is poverty elimination and per capita income. Poverty elimination and per capita income, this will bring balanced development. And therefore, to maintain the balanced development, to have the sustainable development, the present need, present trend which has emerged, that you can say make in India, made in India. Concept of make in India is the spread development opportunity across a territory more widely. And this is the success to attain the sustainable development through the Make in India. balanced development between the balanced development, the infrastructure provision, between the promotion of economic development and the provision of homes and services. This is the basic objective of the Make in India to gain the sustainable development, and this Make in India sustainable development component having longevity of the sustainability. Longevity of the sustainability, which having the consideration of inflation, interest rate, deflation, unemployment, debt, falling saving and excessive credit. All this will be solved. These are pathway to sustainable development, to bring the sustainability. Fiscal production, rational taxing and spending, infrastructure development where transportation, power, housing, green projects, rapid transit system of the transportation, amenities, feasibilities, all these will be achieved for the present and will continue for the future generation through the Make in India. So these are different components for which the sustainable development achieved through the initiatives. Friends, among the initiatives of the Make in India, where we have a traditional empowerment of the natural resources for sustainable development, green renewable energy. It is our asset for the country, including the major renewable energy resources, hydro energy, wind, solar, biomass, tidal, geothermal, wave energy, biofuel and bagases. These are the components which are achieved to enhance the sustainable development in our country. Consumption production ratio trained, making the economic, social and ecological components to bring the parameters of the social, economic, ecological sustainability, including the health, education, social equity, social well-being, social capital, tribal development and institutional facilities. Through the institutional justice, we have access to the justice at each and every section of the society. Friends, that brings the gender equality, overall cultural conservation, social development and the social sustainability. Friends, coming to the sustainable development of the economic sustainability, the ecological sustainability, what we need the components of the sustainable development where the people should have prosperous, will develop a good partnership, and our planet where we live should be a planet of peace with economic, ecological and social development. Thank you very much. We have developed all the components of the sustainable development. Friends, if you have any query, any question, you are most welcome for the question. Thank you very much.
On that note, I would like to thank sir for the very enriching discussion, and thank you dear friends for watching our show. Stay tuned and keep watching. Thank you.